As Casalhon's executive director, you would be responsible for shaping the organization's long-term vision and leading it through periods of change and growth. Can you describe a time when you had to steer a team through a significant transformation or challenge? In your response, tell me about the strategies you developed, how you inspired and united your team, and how you measured your impact how your impact measured up in the outcome.
I think, as my experience as PCN director, PCN changes every single year. It depends on what your tasks look like, it depends on what your CC looks like, and it depends on what your board looks like, but it also really just depends on all of these other factors of, can we still work with these organizations? Are these organizations still available? What is the current energy that we want PCN to embody? Because it's not just a reflection of the vision that CC has, but it's a reflection of, is this what this space needs right now? Which I think is always embodied in the yearly theme as well. So when it comes to changes, I feel like doing this PCN season and being unsure if we would be able to receive a budget at all was something that was kind of difficult for me to wrap my head around at first. And I was just struggling over the summer to even think about a possibility of a PCN that did not have funding from Senate. Thankfully we did get it, but it took a lot of thinking and introspection as well on how to also ensure that this space continues to sustain itself. So while we did get that funding, I think that mindset was something that I applied to everything within this season, where there's not necessarily anything that is a guarantee, because things are constantly changing. That is to say, I don't have a specific example, because there's so many accumulation of things that have happened over such a short period of time that have not necessarily forced me, because I didn't necessarily feel forced, but have caused me to change and adapt, and I guess to become more flexible in terms of how do I change myself to fit the needs of the people on CC? How do I change myself to fit the needs of membership? And how do I also maintain, I guess, the integrity of what I want? Because at its core, I don't think the core of PCN has changed. To me, it's always been membership, and to me, it will always be membership, and it will always be the community that it forms. But everything else around it, like working with Gawayan instead of working with Agos and communicating with different organizations versus other ones, have constantly changed and shifted. And within the difficulty first is having to take a step back and zoom out from all of it and not panic, which is obviously really hard, but taking that time to zoom out, because sometimes I personally can get very zoomed in, and taking that opportunity to just think about what needs to be done in order to accomplish this larger goal. And taking it step by step is what has helped me be able to manage things, but also consulting other people in that conversation as well. Because I don't like to make decisions without talking to people through it first. And I think that's something that I learned to do more within this position that I have currently, is to communicate more with people, to get guidance from people. Because without that, I would truly be lost. Because nobody is an island. That is all to say, when it comes to challenges, the biggest lesson I have learned is not working alone. And the biggest way that I have learned to overcome those challenges is to actively work with other people.
So as you do this multiple presenting to the team, the board, we have people with different community styles, opinions, and ways of working. Have you planned to navigate conflict or differences within the board while still building trust in the community?
I think when it comes to communication, transparency is obviously, it's something that I apply to CC, it's something that I want to apply to everything, and it's something that I really value, having open, honest, and transparent communication. But above that, hopefully being able to cultivate a space where everyone feels comfortable enough around each other to communicate with each other. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to conflict, the most that I can do is hear out the people who want to speak with me about it and facilitate conversations and be there to support them. But outside of that, I can't necessarily dictate what necessarily happens between two people, but I can try to come to an environment where people feel comfortable enough to communicate with each other. And even if the conflict necessarily can't be like fixed in the moment, I would hope that I would be able to facilitate it enough and make these people feel comfortable enough to bring up their concerns to one another, whether it's through a mediated conversation or through me like talking to the both of them and having them both eventually talk to each other, even if it's a long form way of getting to a resolution, making sure that these people are still able to work with each other professionally, even though there's a conflict currently going on, is my #1 priority, and making sure both of them feel comfortable enough to voice their concerns to each other eventually, even if it takes time.
This was a question submitted through the Q&A form. How would you foster a more inclusive and welcoming environment within Kasamahan, making sure that all members feel valued and engaged?
I think that similarly with large-scale events like PCN, because it is a season with a bunch of different membership involved, it's really difficult to connect with each person individually because there are so many people. What I aim to do is to do my part in making sure that I can connect with people on an individual level first, that I get to know people. I want to get better at talking to other people, talking to the Kasamas, getting to know people's names, getting to know people personally, and being able to step into this space and help people feel comfortable coming into this space. So the first piece is that I'm able to do that, and I'm able to talk to people, and I'm able to make them feel welcome. The second piece in that is, because I cannot foster an environment on my own, is ensuring that the executive board are on the same page about fostering this environment, that we know the environment that we want to cultivate, that I am able to instill in as a leader, but also as a fellow friend and Kasama, that we want to include people, we want to speak to people, we want to be personable. And although that is harder for different people depending on their level of comfortability and depending on whether they are more introverted and whether it's more difficult for them to talk to other people, just being very cognizant of that and playing to the strengths of other people on the executive board. Some people will be more low-key, and that plays to a large portion of membership who are more low-key. Some people are more hyper, and that plays to other people in membership. Because everyone on the executive board are different as individuals, they are able to interact with people on deeper levels that I'm not able to, and other people on board will also be able to interact with other people in different ways.
Jeremiah, Justin, Josh, Alexa.
What would you do if you start to see another board member start to become very excited for some unrelated things? Additionally, how would you make sure board members don't get this feeling of burning out?
Jeremiah, can you repeat that question louder, please?
Okay. What would you do if you start to see another board member start to become burnt out with Kasamahan related things? How will you make sure board members don't get this feeling of burning out?
I think the most important thing to me is always that before you are a Kasama, you are a student, and before you are a student, you are a person. This is something that our executive director, Kirstel, my freshman year, preached during PCN. At least that was the first time I heard her say it personally. And it's something that I think about constantly, and it's something that I also like to apply to my life. Although I love being in this organization, I know that I need to take care of myself first, and I need to make sure that I am in the right mindset to be not just physically present, but also fully present for the people around me. And if I were to know that and start to notice that a new board member is feeling burnt out, I would want to talk to them. I would want to let them know that if you are feeling overwhelmed, it is okay to take a step back. If you cannot be here right now, it is okay to take a step back. Regardless of what the job is right now and how they feel like it is really important, if it is coming at the expense of themselves, nothing is that important, and there are always people around them to be able to help them with that task or help them. So when it comes to that situation, I would talk to them. I would want to sit down with them, and I would want to have an open and honest conversation about, hey, I've been noticing you've been feeling burnt out recently, or I've been noticing that you're kind of down, and I'd want to talk it through with them, and I'd want to let them know that it's okay to step back even with obligations. And in order to prevent burnout, I do want to emphasize it's important, yes, to do your tasks, but more so, it's important to enjoy them. Like, a lot of people like to think of being on executive board as a job, and to an extent you do have a lot of tasks, and you do have things that you do need to complete in order to achieve a goal, but it should not be a job. Because these are positions that we feel inspired to fill, that we want to fill. And I never want it to get to the point where it feels overwhelming and like a job that someone doesn't want to go to. So I would definitely want them to prioritize themselves, and I would want to emphasize that early on for board members to prioritize themselves regardless.
Coming from a line of executive directors, Joel, now, and now to you, you obviously have a taste of what it's like to be executive director. What do you think is the most important idea or part of executive director that you believe you can provide or grow upon based on their leadership? And what would you do differently to individualize this role to your own boosts and interests?
I think I don't think I necessarily have had a taste of what it's like to be executive director because, like, my grands was an executive director and because my ate is, because I do have a personal relationship with them. Regardless of whether I was on board with both of them when they were executive directors, and I was able to witness their leadership, but in terms of the decisions that they made and in terms of the workload that they didn't disclose that to me necessarily. And sometimes they would talk about it if it's necessary and relevant, but their experiences and the work they go through are things that I've only been able to observe, in a sense. And obviously I've asked them about their roles and I've learned more about it from them, and I've been able to garner that. But when it comes to things that I've learned from their leadership styles and things that I've learned from inspires me how driven the both of them are, how their love for this space grows, and how they have stuck with this space since they've entered it. It almost seems like there's a charge within both of them, although in different ways. Jewel really inspired me so much my freshman year especially because I was so amazed by her during the first time when I watched Sigil. I know that is such a PCN director answer, but the first time that I witnessed her perform and have that care for Philippine culture, that really inspired me. And I saw that throughout her term as executive director, but being able to see that more closely in Janelle, because I spent more time working closely with Janelle through my position on board, is I've learned that there is no weakness in being vulnerable. And there's no weakness in saying, I need help. I can't do this, I don't know this. There's no weakness in that. And I think being able to be vulnerable with people and be honest with people, even if it's honest to a fault, is important in order to build that connection and also in order to make people feel like they are connected to you. Because Kasamahan practices horizontal leadership. I am no different than any other general member. Yes, I will have tasks, and yes, as PCN director, I do have tasks, but that doesn't separate me from anyone else, because just like everyone else, I want to enjoy PCN season, and the only reason why I love this role that I currently have is because I love watching people fall in love with it. So as executive director, what I have learned from other people is that I want to create that same environment that I always feel, and I never want myself to feel like that environment is no longer that kind of space for me. And I also learned from Janelle that same piece, like, Kasamahan should not feel like a job. It should feel like something that you love.
2 years of board, 3 years of school. Where do you feel that you've grown the most over the last 2-3 years, and where do you feel that you still have room to grow in this final year?
To be completely transparent, I feel like I've grown the most over when did this semester start? When this semester started in January, however many months ago that was, 2, 3, time is not real. But I feel like that period of time from when this semester started up until right now has been the most that I have grown, because it has also been the most that I have interacted with people, the most that I have worked with people. And that's not to say that I have not been involved in organizations in the past. I was involved in 8 clubs in high school with leadership positions, and I worked with a lot of people, but I mean this in a tangible, different way, where now I am actively involved with people and in a community with organizations outside of this, with people I have personal connections to, And I genuinely feel like every single person I interacted with these past few months, I have a genuine and personal connection to. Regardless of if it's within Parangal, regardless of if it's within Agos, and regardless of if it's even within Kawayan and other organizations, getting to work with them more and learn from them more and grow with the people around me on CC as well and on board, I feel like more than anything, I have been able to learn from them. I've been able to lean on people more, which is something that honestly, I'm not the best at, and I haven't been the best at, but especially over these past few months, I have. And I have learned the importance in that, and I've learned to be able to not just trust myself, but also trust in the people I am around. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, before the next question, because I know we have more people who also want to ask questions, I also have more questions to be asked from like the form. So I motion for 10 more minutes in the Q&A.
Second.
So, my question is, how will you work to balance your personal friendships with your fellow e-board members while also ensuring you maintain professionalism and accountability in a space such as board?
I think especially this year with not just being on board but also being on CC and having like being a part of a committee like that, I've learned that one, it's really important to foster personal connections, and I think that what was really beautiful about this year especially is that I got to get close to a lot of people that this space allowed me to be close to. People that run in different friend groups and people that I necessarily wouldn't have interacted with before just because we're from different majors or we know different people, we're from different years. And I think the beauty in like being on executive board and being on committees is being able to meet people who are drawn together by one larger interest. And the way that I plan to balance friendships with them is to first build and cultivate them with everyone. I know that might seem counterintuitive, but I think it's important to build personal connections with people if you are working with them. Because I feel like when you understand someone on a personal level, you understand them on a work level, and you also understand to check how they are feeling and how they are doing. And to me, that's really important when working with a group of people. In terms of balancing that with professionalism, I feel like it's important to connect with people and it's important to be friends, but knowing roles and responsibilities, it is also important to be transparent about when this is an important expectation that we need to meet as leaders, when this is something that needs to be communicated. Hey, this is something we need to do, let's get back on topic, communicating that clearly and being able to also be firm with those boundaries, but not necessarily harsh. And I feel like there is a way to be firm and not harsh at the same time, and there is a way to communicate, let's get back on topic, let's get back on schedule, let's make sure we get this done, and then we can have fun and hang out later. And it's important to emphasize that, yes, we are here as friends, but let's finish this common goal, and then let's go be silly together later. And I feel like that's what builds that sense of teamwork as well.
Considering the current challenges and opportunities facing the Commonwealth, what specific goals would you set for the organization in the next year? Also, how would you go about achieving these goals, and how would you measure whether they are successful?
I think it really depends on what the space needs. And that is hard to predict. But it also depends on the unified goals and what brings the board together. What I am sensing and what also I've been thinking more about recently, and especially because of everything going on right now, is being able to connect with the larger network outside of this organization and being able to broaden that out. In order to do that, it requires a lot of early collaboration and a lot of collaboration with many executive board members, not just Daro, although that is a large part of Daro's job, is outreach. it also depends upon what is this in the goals of the cultural relations director? What is this in the goals of the PCN director? What is this in the goals of the activities director? And being able to see how this larger overarching goal of reaching out and broadening horizons out more connect with these specific positions. And when it comes to measuring success within that, it's difficult to say. To me, success is if it is able to touch one person, to reach one person, and if it is able to benefit one person, then I see that as success. And I see that as something that is necessary to happen and something that is not a waste of time. Even if only one person shows up at an event, even if only one person is impacted by an event or impacted by us reaching out to an external organization or having an alumni panel, for example, that is enough to me. I know a lot of the times when we gauge success, we gauge it in terms of larger engagement, a bunch of people showing up to an event, having 150 members in PCN. But speaking from my heart, even if there were only 12 people in the PCN show, if those 12 people really loved being a part of it, then I would feel completely satisfied and fulfilled. So I think success isn't necessarily a target number. It is, if anyone is deeply touched by it, then I've met my goal.
I'll go me, then Jess, then Mark. Do you believe that you have to be executive director to enact the change or impact that you want to see in this organization?
Absolutely not. I do not think I need to be executive director. I do not think executive director needs to be me. I would not be running for this position if I did not love this space or feel like I had something to give this space, but at the same time, it does not need to be me. And this space will continue to exist without me, and I will continue to love this space regardless of if I'm on board or not. Regardless of if I'm in a committee, regardless of if I'm super active, I choose to be in this space and I want to be in this space because I want to be with all of you. And while membership changes every year, I still love the people who leave and return, but I come to love all of the new people that enter within this space. And regardless of if I am executive director or not, regardless of if I am on board, I know that I will keep coming back to this space and I will keep loving this space because I love what this space represents. I love the people in this space and what they represent. And I love the history and everything that this space is founded on. It is truly magical to have a Filipino organization that has been here since the 70s. Like, that is insane. And knowing that that started from just a few passionate people and it grew into something much larger, I simply feel the privilege of being in this space with this many people and having access to the broad network and resources that Kasama Hunt does.
Being able to have the privilege of being on board for 2 years now, you have experienced two diverse and different types of leaders on board and members that have entered the space.
Membership comes in waves, if that makes sense. And that's not always like a huge predictor, but there will always be some years that are more active than others because there's also more enrollment in some years than others, which is harder to predict, maybe easier if you counter in tuition increase. Sorry, that's not necessarily completely related, but that is to say that membership changes with these different things, and there's flows within the years. How I plan to factor in the changes that I've noticed and also the changes in leadership is, I think, overall, throughout the years that I have been a member, which granted are only 3, but that is the maximum that I can have up until this point. I've noticed that what I have seen most effective, or at least what I have been most personally touched by, is leadership that is personable and leadership that is person first. And that was my introduction into this space, and that has truly never left me. underscoring that yes, we are Kasamas, but we are also people, and underneath that there is a unique person, a unique perspective, and just a unique difficulty, a unique way of life, and a unique strength that comes within that. And that is to say, having that leadership that recognizes its individualities and recognizes that it is these specific people within this space that choose to inhabit it and that choose to interact with each other that create it. And just being able to be attuned with that, to communicate with people, see what people actually want, what people need, and notice how the space has evolved over time to want to emphasize more things like outreach and community and also culture and also community and political events has been really interesting. But yeah, overall, attuning with the people around me and making sure that what they want is what this space reflects, because they are what this space is.
And Laura's question will be our last question for the night.
Okay. Beyond day-to-day operations, the role of PBs are creating a lasting impact that benefits the organizations that you become. You may have just answered this with your previous answers, but how do you envision your legacy at Kasama, and what long-term initiatives would you prioritize to ensure enduring success?
I think, at least I hope, that I can be the type of leader that is personable, that makes connections, that empowers people to step into these positions. Because at the end of the day, I want to fulfill my role to support and encourage other people, whether it's on executive board, whether it's on committees, or whether it is people that we meet in this space or outside of this space. I want to be able to listen to them, to encourage them, to uplift them and support them, and give them the tools that they need to succeed. The legacy that I want to leave is not necessarily one of my own, but one that this space carries on, that we lean on each other, and that we listen to each other, and that we build this community together. Because the legacy of Kasamahan runs much deeper than what it is now. And I think the beauty of this space is that I don't think it will ever die. I think that the legacy of Kasamahan will continue to go on because of all of the love that is poured in it. And because even if it was just 5 people, those 5 people would have pride in it. And I know that's not directly related to the question, but I guess that is to say I don't necessarily envision myself leaving a legacy, because the legacy that I want to leave is what this space creates, and I don't necessarily think that necessarily comes from me. I think it comes from every single person in it, and every single person who shapes it. Every single thread that is woven into it is a person, is a memory, is an experience, and I think that is the legacy that we'll leave, the legacy of the year to come. But I don't think that is necessarily something that I will create on my own, because it's a collection of everybody else working together.
That is our Q&A for Executive Director.